it's Jekyll, long time no see. As a once, I think it's safe to say that this past month has been somewhat of a fever dream. From misamo promoting in Japan to jihyo now promoting in Korea, there's been so much new music from Twice, which I think is really exciting. As I listened to Misamo's masterpiece and then jihyo's Zone, I had a lot of thoughts that overlapped between the two releases, so I thought, why not talk about them together? And that's what I'll be doing today. Let's get into it. So, starting off with Misamo's unit debut, Masterpiece. Overall, I think there's a nice balance of moments that are sonically familiar in this EP, like airy, floaty vocals, and everything tending towards the softer side. And then there's also newer sounds for the unit, like more fuller-bodied choruses, different genres to explore, and melodies in lower registers. I think the vocals are actually quite nice throughout the entire EP. There isn't anything too crazy high or technically difficult, and I think genre searches between the songs are well handled. Across the EP, the song choice is really smart in that it prioritizes ranges of melodies that the members are vocally comfortable with. I remember when this unit was first announced, there was some talk about Misamo's vocal ability and whether they'd be able to carry a whole EP. I didn't actually have too many worries about that coming in. I think that Sana is a relatively capable vocalist who has kind of come into her own in the past few years, and Mina is also just fine when they're not asked to do anything super crazy. And yeah, we knew coming in that this release wouldn't and shouldn't be too crazy vocally, but I think most of the tracks in the album do a good job of balancing Misamo's vocal abilities while also leaving some room to experiment. In terms of the title track, Do Not Touch isn't particularly hard-hitting, at least sonically, and this kind of threw me off a bit at first because I think I was expecting a clear level change into the chorus and nothing really came. So I was kind of left in this weird place where I thought we were getting to the chorus and it turns out I was already like halfway through the first chorus, which was weird. But that being said, I think that this song not having a bombastic chorus, either vocally or production-wise, is actually a really good choice for this unit. These three members all have skill sets that are more suited for performance, and on the vocal side, all of their voices, but specifically Mina and Sana's, are much more comfortable and at home in a silky, sensual sound than a hard-hitting one. However, while I like the first half of the chorus, I do think that on the production side they could have added a couple more layers into the second half just to bring a little more direction and oomph. I think that might just be me though. And I think one of the parts of the song that I really enjoyed were all of Momo's rap sections. I think they bring a lot of needed contrast, and they're definitely my favorite parts in the song. And speaking of Momo rapping, let's talk about it. Her vocal color sounds so good, especially when she's rapping in her lower register. I think in Marshmallow especially, her raps are so pleasant on the ears. They're not really abrasive in any way, but they hit just hard enough to groove and to contrast the lighter vocals from Mina and Sana. And I think the sound is really great and really balanced in all of these tracks when she's rapping. I'd love to see some of it integrated into Twice's full group releases, and I'd just love to see more of this from Momo in general. Looking at the EP as a whole, I do think some of the vocal trends across the project are a bit samey by the end. I think this unit is a bit limited in what they can do vocally, so I think it makes sense that the ballads maybe do not have as much personality as some of the earlier tracks. I definitely think that the slower songs at the end are the weakest tracks in the album, and that maybe brings down my overall assessment of the project a little bit. But there is still enough variation and substance in the first few tracks to establish how Misamo's sound can stand and develop independently of Twice's sound. So before we move on to talking about jihyo's album, I have a few standout tracks from Masterpiece that I want to talk about individually. I absolutely love how much this track pulls from jazz. From the piano line throughout to the groovier, kind of syncopated and swung figures in the top line, this song grooves in such a unique way. I also love the way the top line and piano line are parallel in the pre-chorus. I think it's really effective. And when the chorus fills out with more rhythm section and added brass, it brings a lot of impact to the song that I really enjoy. I think some of the vocal choices made in the chorus, especially the contrast between longer figures at the start and shorter ones later, I think that's really effective. And for my own personal taste, Mina really owns this song. I think her smoother vocal timbre works really well with this jazzier sound. And she sounds really confident. I really enjoy, even Sana and Momo also sound so confident in some of this song and some of the first three tracks. And I just love to see it. I love to see them in their element. And this, in terms of jazz, was not really a sound that I expected at all from this EP, but I think it works really well, and this track stands out both alone and also works in the context of the larger project. Funny Valentine is all about contrast. The verses start in this lower, darker space with longer phrases over sparse instrumentals, and then the pre-chorus opens it up, brightening the sound with higher layers in the production and also a higher vocal register, which then leads into this airy, kind of creeping chorus. And then after that, there's a darker post-chorus, and then it all cycles again with the verses. I also think there's this parallel contrast between the higher melodies from Mina and Sana in the chorus, and then Momo's lower melodies in the verses. And I think it's really great that everyone is singing in their most comfortable range. I think all of the lines really suit them. Overall, I just love that this track sits in this kind of almost metronomic space. It doesn't really push or pull too much, but it's not really static either. I think there's a lot of smart choices in the production level and even from vocal delivery that help to bring the song some dynamism. All in all, I think it's a very enjoyable listen and definitely one of the stronger tracks on this EP. And now, let's talk about jihyo's solo debut, Zone. On first listen, one of the thoughts that crossed my mind was, this is jihyo's sound, which kind of surprised me because neither Twice nor jihyo have ever had a sound that's even remotely like this. And yet, within a minute of listening, I could identify this EP as uniquely her own. One of the things that I most enjoy about this release is that it sits at the lower end of her vocal range, with the exception being B-side Wishing on You. This is jihyo's best register, and I think it really shows. Her lower end timbre is rich and full-bodied, which makes for an incredibly compelling listen across 7 tracks. I also appreciate that the vocals aren't really about power. In Twice, jihyo's role boils down to more of a power vocalist, hitting all those high notes at the end, but here, she can be more nuanced. Across 7 tracks, it feels like she's experimenting with vocal techniques and sounds that she wouldn't have the chance to try out in a group setting. And the end product is an EP that presents jihyo in a novel, individual light. Jihyo's delivery and artistic ability is what brings cohesion to the project as a whole. No 2 tracks sound exactly the same, nor do they require the same things from jihyo's voice, but the inherent dark richness in her timbre carries through regardless. Across genre and theme, jihyo's voice is the stitching that holds this EP together. I think talking about it is jihyo's voice at its best. When Hyde and I first listened to this EP, we both thought she sounded kind of like Lady Gaga. She's so dramatic, almost theatrical, and against a relatively sparse instrumental, it's her voice that does most of the pushing and pulling. I actually don't have a lot to say about the title track, aside from the general trends that characterize the project as a whole. I do, however, have some thoughts on a few of the B-sides, which I think were definitely the standouts in this project. Closer is my favorite song on this EP by far. The production is so tight, and jihyo's vocal delivery is absolutely spot on. Genre-wise, reggaeton might on paper seem like it wouldn't fit in the soundscape of this EP, but I think it works perfectly. The verses and pre-chorus do a great job of building tension, and I absolutely love the chorus. The long, drawn-out, luscious vocal phrases are a perfect contrast to the movement in the production, which creates dynamism that pushes the track forward into later sections. My only problem with the song is the runtime. 2 minutes and 36 seconds was absolutely not enough. Don't wanna go back. 나에겐 참 특별했던 너 꿈에 하지만 이젠 사라져버린 romance. Oh baby we can turn back. We're on the right track. I don't wanna go back. When I first saw the set list, this was the track I was most drawn to because of how interesting this collab sounded. Jihyo and Hyde's are kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to vocal delivery. Where Jihyo's delivery is full, rich, and grounded, Hyde's excels in a lighter, airier, floatier space. Yet, in this song, both of them have this inherent darkness in their vocal delivery that weaves their voices together nicely. When they double the chorus, Hyde's vocals are whispered echoes above Jihyo's, which settles the song into this dreamy headspace that is neither fully grounded nor fully floating. It works really, really well. This is definitely one of my favorite duets to come out of K-pop in a long time. The atmosphere and ambience the song creates is just out of this world. I love how relaxed jihyo sounds here, and the first verse shows off what the lower end of the register can do in this regard. On the production side, the groove is pretty simple, but there are a lot of layers added to bring color and personality to each individual section. I absolutely adore the string line that starts in the first chorus and continues throughout. While listening, I couldn't help but compare the song to a duet between two strings. Jihyo's melody is the cello, rich and gorgeous, and the higher string line is the counter melody floating in and out, the complement to the top line. It's just such a gorgeous listen. To me, Masterpiece and Zone both achieve the central goal of a debut project, establishing a cohesive soundscape that adequately represents the artist. More than that, these releases do a great job of identifying how Misamo and jihyo respectively can stand out as artists away from their full group work in Twice. I would characterize both of these projects as relatively unique in Twice's overall soundscape. Misamo's EP is characteristically smooth and silky, and while the sound is admittedly present in Twice's more recent discography, it's not to the extent that Masterpiece explores it. jihyo's, on the other hand, is dark and rich and basically entirely new. We haven't really heard anything like this from Twice at all. Given Twice's lengthy and comprehensive discography, it's extremely commendable that both Misamo and jihyo have defined sonic concepts that exist in separate spheres from their full group work. I think that shows just how much thought and care went into crafting both of these releases. It was such a pleasure to get both of these back to back in the same month, and I really hope that Twice's future solo and unit work continues to explore in the same ways these two releases have. So that wraps up my thoughts on Masterpiece and Zone. What do you think? Do you agree? Disagree? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for staying tuned. Jekyll out.